The scientific community is melting down over the discovery of Sodom and Gomorrah. This is a crazy story, and what I love most about this is any of you guys who've ever been interested in going to Israel, when you go, you will discover the amount of archaeological evidence that confirms different people in the Bible, like Pontius Pilate, different streets that were courts, like David's palace they didn't think existed, and they find it. It is beyond fascinating, all of the amazing archaeological discoveries that just happened within the last 20 years, okay? And so this story is much like that because it perplexes the scientific community. Be like, oh, there's no way that could have happened. That doesn't make any sense. How could that biblical story be true? That's just a fantasy. And sure enough, there is now archaeological evidence that Sodom, from the Bible story, existed, okay? Scientific community meltdown over controversial discovery of biblical Sodom. The city remains in a fury near the Dead Sea, have archaeologists at odds, okay? So it's very interesting. So I wanted to show you guys this clip from one of my favorite Catholic creators, believe it or not, and he interviews John Bergsma on this topic. This is Pints with Aquinas.
Sodom and Gomorrah.
Sodom and Gomorrah. That is one of the most sensational stories.
Sum it up for those
recent
who
history.
not as aware as they should be.
Yes. Okay. I mean, so Sodom and Gomorrah, it looks like one of those mythological stories out of the Bible, right? Oh yeah, sure. You know, fire comes from heaven. Yeah, tell me another one. And I'll be honest with you, Matt. When I was growing up and reading Genesis 19 and stuff like that, it was a challenge to my faith. I'm like, okay, come on, really? You know, this really happened? Or are we supposed to understand this? Several years ago now, maybe like 15 years ago, I was at the Society of Biblical Literature, which was being held in that year in San Francisco. I just wandered into this session because it had an intriguing title. You know, something about archaeological discoveries at el-Hammam in Jordan. I thought, well, I'll walk into this, you know. I start listening, and as I'm listening to this presentation for about 45 minutes, near the end of it, I began to realize, oh my gosh, these people presenting think that they have found the biblical cities of Sodom and Gomorrah.
That's crazy. Okay, now where do they think Sodom and Gomorrah is? Well, as we looked at it earlier, they believe that it's near the Dead Sea Scroll. What everyone agrees on, something unusual happened at el-Hammam, an ancient settlement near the Dead Sea. In a layer of ancient earth, archaeologists claim to have found the evidence of an apocalyptic event. Melted rooftops, disintegrated pottery, unusual patterns in the rock formation that can be caused with intense heat. For another 3 to 6 centuries after 1650 BC, the settlement, 100 acres, lay fallow.
So at the end of the presentation, they stop the presentation and they open up for questions, and they describe these 2 city mounds that they had found on the Jordanian side of the Jordan River, and in this destruction layer and so on. And so I raised my hand immediately and I said, well, did you find any arrowheads? The reason I asked that, Matt, is when you have a destruction layer of an ancient city, if you find arrowheads in the destruction layer, it means that an army caused the destruction and they were shooting arrows at the defenders and blah, 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 blah.
Ah, okay. That's interesting.
If you find a destruction layer and there aren't arrowheads, that means an army did not destroy the city, and then probably it was some kind of natural event.
Whoops. Can you guys all see where this is going?
Right? So I'm curious, like, what destroyed these 2 cities that you guys think are Sodom and Gomorrah? And so the researcher starts to get very bashful when I ask this question. He says, well, I didn't really want to go there, but all I want to say while we're recording this session is that it was a heat event.
Okay, why this is so fascinating is because people repeatedly attempting to disprove parts of the Bible repeatedly get egg on their face because there are more and more of these stories that are confirmed by archaeology and then also confirmed in other non-biblical accounts and other oral traditions. Now we have Sodom and Gomorrah, and obviously the flood is another one of those, right? So it's very fascinating that this sort of stuff continues to get confirmed.
And there's like 20 other people in the room, and we're like looking at each other like, a heat event? Like, is that like a wardrobe malfunction? Like, what is
global warming, ladies and gentlemen? It was global warming.
A heat event. You know, like, okay. And then he stopped the recording, like the official session was over, you know, and so it was like off camera at this point. So all of us in the room, like, mobbed the guy at the front, like, okay, you know, tell us what's going on. And so this researcher, Stephen Collins he's from a Southwestern university in the US here, he says, okay, so we get down to this destruction layer of this city that we're beginning to think is Sodom, and we pulled up a piece of pottery, and when I looked on one side of it, I thought, oh no, our research is ruined because I saw that it was glazed. And glazing wasn't invented until the Ottoman period, or at least the kind of glazing that he thought he saw. And the Ottoman period is like 1000 AD.
Right.
And if you're pulling that
later.
up, that means you've got contamination in your archaeological dig. You got like later artifacts down there. But then he turned the pottery over, and on the back of it, it was typical Bronze Age pottery. But it was glazed on one side and not on the other. Like, what on earth is going on? So make a long story short, he sends this away to a lab in the US and for testing, and they come back and say, well, that glazing is Trinitite. Okay, great. What's Trinitite? Well, Trinitite is that glass layer that you get when you basically set off an atomic bomb in the desert, and it melts the glass, and you get a kind of crystalline formation that's called Trinitite. So,
Wow. Okay. Learn about new elements here. Feel smarter by the moment.
this pottery was raised to over 4,000 degrees Fahrenheit for a brief moment of time. Oh my gosh.
Wow.
This is what's going on.
4,000 degrees.
They continue to bring up this glazed pottery, and eventually what they discover is, among other things, they also begin to find human remains. They find human skeletons that are complete up until about halfway up the backbone, and then there's just a scorch mark, and there's nothing on the top of the body. And they find the skeleton behind a wall that's about, 4 feet high. So what's going on here? Well, long story short, they find massive evidence that a huge heat blast from the sky at about 25 degrees above the horizon incinerated these twin cities on the Jordanian side of the river.
What? This is crazy. This is crazy. I mean, yeah, buddy. Yeah, God don't play. Wow. This is insane. Wow.
Just north of the Dead Sea, yeah, and they have the artifacts to prove it.
The reason it had to be from above
Because
is
of the angle, like they have these human remains that apparently were standing upright behind a wall, and everything above the wall was incinerated, and they do like the angular calculations, and they can see, oh, that blast was coming like this, so they can calculate the angle at which, and the stuff when they find the stuff in situ, and they've got a scorched side or a melted side, again, they can triangulate where this is coming from. And so, long story short, from a natural material, explanation, this looks like a meteor blast.
Okay. That's what I was about to ask. What was the naturalistic explanation?
Yeah, like
of course, the naturalist is gonna be like, "It's a meteor blast. The meteor blast. It was aliens. The aliens shot lasers. Pew 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 pew. They shot lasers at us." And then the Christian's like, wait. We know what this is. We've been talking about this for thousands of years.
Like in Tunguska, I think it was called Siberia back in the 1800s. There was this, massive meteor blast that flattened, several hundred square miles of taiga, of, northern Russian forest and so on. And, when a meteor comes into the atmosphere, it heats up and then explodes, and it can be like an atomic blast. But again, the timing and the location and the cities all track with what is described of Abraham and Lot in Genesis 19 and the surrounding chapters. And then the Bible talks a lot about Sodom and Gomorrah for centuries thereafter, all the way into the prophets like Isaiah and Jeremiah continue to mention Sodom and Gomorrah. This stuck in the cultural memory because this was a major world historical traumatic event for us, like the two towers going down, like this major disaster where these two cities were entirely wiped out by a heat blast from the sky, by the hand of God, as it were. But no historical source records this, even though Sodom and Gomorrah were arguably the two most powerful cities in that entire region. They were at a trade route, from going from east to the west, from Egypt out to.
Sheesh, man. You know what the interesting part about this is? This really, when you think of the story of Sodom, and remember Jesus mentions the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay, so whatever is confirmed by Jesus, it should be taken literally, meaning Jesus confirms Sodom and Gomorrah. Jesus confirms Adam and Eve are literal people. It's not symbolic. It's not a literary device. It's a literal thing that happened. So what reminds me of this is Jesus, who died for our sins, rose on a third day, created a pathway for us to be in right standing with God. It just reminds me that the story of Sodom and Gomorrah reminds us that the justice of God and the wrath of God and the need to deal with humanity's deplorable, wicked behavior is just as alive in the Old Testament and in the New Testament, right? Like in the New Testament, Jesus deals with it, but he doesn't downplay it. It's not like, oh, well, God was wrong or God was a bad guy in the Old Testament. Some of us approach the Bible like that. as if like, oh, you know, God was kind of mean in the Old Testament, but in the New Testament, Jesus kind of, you know, he softened the blow. No. Like, God is going to be full of grace and truth. There's going to be a grace and a mercy to him, as there was in the story of Sodom, right? But there's also going to be a vengeance and a wrath and a truth that is going to happen, and justice, right? And so I appreciate the archaeology confirming this, right? Because I think it's beyond fascinating.
You know, the Far East and everything was passing through there. So very powerful, very wealthy cities. And only the biblical record, you know, has a historical account of this, you know, meteorological, geological event that we can now attest that tracks with the time period and the description. And also that blast going up creates a great vacuum, which then recollapses and pulls all kinds of salt sediment from the Dead Sea and then slams it on that location that was in the bullseye of, and that's where you get, you know, the discussion of, you know, became a pillar of salt and all the hellfire, the brimstone, you know, that was all torn up by the blast and redeposited over the cities. So it's absolutely fascinating. And folks can look this up. I'm not making this up. Steve Collins, a very reputable archaeologist from something like Southwestern Methodist University or something like this. You can look online. Just go to Amazon and type in like the discovery of Sodom and Gomorrah in his book. I forget the exact title.
Thursday's on it.
But yeah, you can find it and put a link to it.
Wow.
And so yeah, that really changed my perspective on the Old Testament, Matt, because what it pointed out to me is things that sounded too outlandish to be history, that even I as a believer was attempted to discount, suddenly and sensationally shown to be, you know, actually that's a historical event.
Now, do you think it was a meteor? Do you think that a Christian can say it was a meteor and it's God using the meteor to...
Absolutely.
I see.
You know, I think this. I mean, the providence is in the timing. I mean, that's the timing of God. It's like
if you're a sinner and you walk into a church and get struck by lightning.
Right. Oh, that was just a natural.
Yeah, that's good. Shout out to Pints with Aquinas, one of my favorite Catholic apologists that I keep up with. Wow, what an interesting story. But yeah, absolutely. I think we approach these things, and sometimes you read in the Bible and you got a level of skepticism to it, but the reality is there's a lot of just history in there. We see, according to the Bible, that prayer is extremely important in terms of us being transformed from the inside out when we get aligned with God's will. For the Christians watching this channel, I want you guys to implement these spiritual disciplines in your day-to-day life. And the only way I've been able to do this consistently is through writing down my prayers in a prayer journal that does a few things. One, it allows me to reflect and come to God humbly and ask him to move on my behalf. And two, it allows me to document my prayers, which ultimately help me remember the very things that I was praying for and see the hand of God tangibly in my life when he answers them. So I would urge you, consider writing down your prayers. It could be in a blank notebook. It could even be on your phone. Or you could check out the one I personally designed and used from my own quiet time and spiritual discipline that I think will be a huge blessing. It's the exact structure and system that I've used for years to pray and be more consistent in my spiritual disciplines. You can pick yours up today by clicking the link in the pinned comment below. All right, I'll see you over there. Peace.